and then I want you to read the text where I tell you. Okay, Aditya, shall we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm starting with this chapter of Your Footprints Without Feet, the necklace. Now, the necklace is a story which revolves around a selfish lady named Matilda. Now, Matilda is a lady who belongs to a middle class family, but she's really very much dissatisfied with her life as she wanted a rich husband, but because she belonged to a family of clerks and her family is unable to give dowry, she is married to a clerk. Now, Matilda is a lady who has always dreamed to be enjoying her life lavishly in all the comforts, luxuries, and richness. Now, one day, both husband and wife they are invited to a party at the minister's house. But Matilda does not have good clothes and jewels to wear at such a party. Her husband suggests her to buy a dress and ask an old friend for jewelry. She then borrows a necklace from a friend and goes to the party. What happens next proves to be a lesson for the unhappy lady. So, in the beginning itself, I would like to tell here that this is a story where the people who pretend to have a lot of riches, a power, or they are generally vexed or they are generally jealous of the people who belong to the rich clan and they try to imitate them. But because they do not have all those riches, and they have that keen desire and temptation towards all those riches and luxuries, they are often trapped in a big problem. So, this is one such story where this lady Matilda, who is very selfish, who wants those, who actually desires and wishes to have those lavishing riches and comforts, of which actually she is devoid of as she's married to a common clerk, right? Now she's invited to the party. The party is at a very grand scale. It's at a minister's house, and all the people from the higher strata of the society will be coming to this party. She wants to visit the party, but she's not having clothes or jewelry accordingly. So here she talks about all these things with her husband. She weeps that she's not having dress accordingly, she's not having jewelry accordingly, and her husband suggests her to borrow jewelry from one of her friends. She borrows her jewelry from one of her friends. She goes to the party. She attends it, and What happens next? That we are going to check it out in the text. Shall we start with the text? Paridhi, please start reading.
Yes, ma'am. She said
Yes.
she was one of those pretty young ladies born as if through an error of destiny into a family of clerks. She had no dowry, no hopes, no means of becoming known, loved, and married by a man either rich or distinguished, and she allowed herself to marry a petty clerk in the office of the Board of Education. She was simple, but she was unhappy. She suffered incessantly, feeling herself born for all delicacy and luxuries. She suffered she suffered from the poverty of her apartment, the shabby walls and the worn chairs. All these things tortured and angered her. When she seated herself for dinner opposite her husband, who uncovered the tureen with a delighted air, saying, "Oh, the good pot pie! I know nothing better than that." She would think of elegant dinners of shining silver. She thought of the exquisite food served in marvelous dishes. She had neither frocks nor jewels, nothing, and she loved only those things. She had a rich friend, a schoolmate at the convent, who she didn't like to visit. She suffered so much when she returned. She wept for whole days from despair and disappointment. One evening, her husband returned elated, bearing in his hand a large envelope. Here, he said, "Here is something for you."
Okay. Now, in the first opening itself, we understand what kind of a lady was Matilda. Matilda was a simple lady, but she suffered. She suffered when she saw the riches of the rich people, the comforts, the luxuries, the joy, the enjoyment which they used to do because of their power and their money. She suffered out of jealousy, right? She wanted all those things. But because she didn't possess it, she didn't belong to a family who could give so much dowry. And she was married to a simple clerk who was a clerk in a board of education. The difference between the behavior and the nature of Matilda and her husband is clearly visible in the first stanza. So perhaps the husband was happy and he tried to satisfy himself. He was satisfied with the kind of life he was having. He opened he uncovered the pot and he said, "Wow, good pot pie. There's nothing better than that." But at that time also, Matilda was lost in her thoughts, where she was served in where she was served delicacies in silver dishes, just like rich people. She neither had frocks nor jewels, nothing, and she loved those things. Now, she had a rich friend, a schoolmate at the convent school, whom she did not like to visit because she was very rich. And whenever she used to come back from her house, Matilda actually suffered because she compared her condition with the friend's, riches and everything. So that made her really unhappy. Now, one day, one good day, her husband brought an envelope and handed it over to Matilda and told her that there's something for you. Aditya, please read further. Start from she quickly drew out. Aditya, shall we continue?
Yes, ma'am.
She quickly drew out.
She quickly drew out a printed card on which were encrypted these words: "The Minister of Public Instruction and Madame George Ramponneau, as the owner of M and MME Loisel's company, Monday evening, January 18, at the minister's residence." Instead of being delighted as her husband had hoped, she threw the invitation spitefully upon the table, murmuring, "What do you suppose I want with that? But, my dearie, I thought it would make you happy. You never go out, and this is an occasion, and a fine one. Everybody wishes one, and it is very select. Not many are given to employees. You will see the whole official world there." She looked at him with an irritated eye and declared impatiently, "What do you suppose I have to wear to such a thing as that?" He had not thought of that. He stammered, "Why, the dress you wear when we go to the theatre. It seems very pretty to me." He was silent, stupefied in dismay, and at the sight of his wife weeping. He stammered, "What is the matter? What is the matter?" By a violent effort, she had controlled her vexation and responded in a calm voice, wiping her moist cheeks, "Nothing. Only I have no dress, and consequently I cannot go to this affair. Give your card to some colleague whose wife is better fitted out than I." He was grieved, but answered, "Let us see, Matilda, what much would a suitable customer cost? Something that would serve for other occasions. Something very simple." She reflected for some seconds, thinking of a sum that she could ask for without bringing with it an immediate refusal and frightened exclamation from the economical clerk. Finally, she said, in a hesitating voice, "I cannot tell exactly, but it seems to be that 400 francs ought to cover it."
Now, the envelope consisted of an invitation at the minister's house. There was a celebration or a party at the minister's house where few selected people were invited. And Matilda Loisel's husband got this opportunity where he was invited along with his family to the minister's house. He was very delighted as he thought that this would really bring joy to Matilda. Matilda would be happy to see that. That was what Mr. Loisel thought. But as he handed over the invitation card to Matilda Loisel, Matilda, on the contrary, she started weeping. She wanted to go at such a grand party where she would see people dressed up in splendid dresses and tempting food, lavishing, and that grandeur would be there. But at the same time, she was worried what she would be wearing there because she does not have clothes and jewelry accordingly. So she stammered, "What do you expect? What do you suppose? What do you expect from me? What should I wear at such a party? I do not have dresses accordingly." So he was silent. But he was not able to say anything as his wife was weeping. So by a violent effort, she had controlled her vexation, and then she responded in a calm voice that she told her husband that she's not having any dress, anything according to wear for the which would fit the party. He was grieved, but he answered, "Let's see, Matilda. We'll do something about it." And then he asked Matilda that what would be the cost of a suitable costume which you could wear in that party. Matilda, considering the fact that ultimately he was just a common clerk, how much he could afford, and then she told him that in a very hesitating voice, she told her husband that I cannot tell exactly, but perhaps 400 francs would be covering it. Means 400 francs would be sufficient to buy a costume, buy a dress which would fit the occasion. Let's continue. He turned a little pale.
He turned a little pale, for he had saved just this sum to buy a gun that he might be able to join some hunting parties to next summer with some friend who went to shoot larks on Sunday. Nevertheless, he answered, "Very well, I will give you 400 francs, but try to have a pretty dress." The day of the ball approached, and Mamie Loisel seemed sad, disturbed, anxious. Nevertheless, her dress was nearly ready. Her husband said to her one evening, "What is the matter with you? You have acted strangely for 2 or 3 days." And she responded, "I am vexed not to have a jewel, nothing to adorn myself with. I shall have such a poverty stricken look. I would prefer not to go to this party." He replied, "You can wear some natural flowers. In this season, they look very chic." She was not convinced. "No," she replied. "There is nothing more humiliating than to have a shabby air in the midst of rich women." Then her husband cried out, "How stupid we are! Go and find your friend Forestier and asked her to lend her jewels." She uttered a cry of joy. "It is true," she said. "I had not thought of that." The next day, she took herself to her friend's house and related her story of distress. Forestier went to her closet, took out a large jewel case, brought it, opened it, and said, "Choose, my dear." She saw at first some bracelet, then a collar of pearls, then a Venetian cross of gold and jewels of admirable workmanship. She tried the jewels before the glass, hesitated, but could neither decide to take them or nor leave them. Then she asked, "Have you nothing more?" "Why, yes, look for yourself. I do not know what will please you." Suddenly, she discovered in a black satin box a superb necklace of diamonds. Her hands trembled as she took it out. She placed it about her throat against her dress and was ecstatic. Then she asked in a hesitating voice full of anxiety, "Could you lend me this? Only this?" "Why, yes, certainly."
Now, when she told about how much money she requires for the dress, the husband was somewhere disturbed, but somehow he managed, right? He had turned a little pale, for he had saved just a sum to buy a gun that might be able to join some hunting parties next summer. This was his saved amount, but he handed over that money to Matilda so that she can purchase a dress for herself. Now, the day of the ball approached, and Loisel seemed sad. Now, still, Matilda Loisel was sad. She was anxious. Nevertheless, her dress was nearly ready. Her dress was ready, but her husband told her one evening that, "What's matter? Why have you acted strangely for the last 2, 3 days?" On this, she responded that I am vexed not to have a jewel. She was disturbed because she was not having jewelry in accordance to her dress. Now, she told her husband that I'm planning not to go to the party because I'm not having jewelry, which I can wear that with that dress, and it is really very humiliating to be amidst the rich ladies and to feel that humiliation because you are not able to carry yourself or you're not able to possess all those things which they have. So it becomes very humiliating and insulting. The husband said, how stupid we are. Why don't you put on, first of all, he suggests her that you can use natural flowers for adoring yourself. But then when she denies for that, the husband gives her the suggestion that she can borrow jewelry from her friend. Mrs. Foister, who was Matilda Rosel's good friends. She was also her schoolmate. They had studied together in the convent. And so she goes to Mrs. Forrester and she asks her for jewelry. Now, Mrs. Forrester gives her a large jewel case, opened it, where she finds pearls, gold, then she find all kinds of jewelry there. And but she was not very happy with that. Then she asked her further, you do have something else also. She again opens up another black satin box and she says, help yourself because I don't know what pleases you. Now there Matilda finds a big diamond set which she placed on her throat, and she finds that very ecstatic. They find it very splendid and beautiful, which would actually go very well with her dress. So thereby she asked in that hesitating voice to her friend that can I take this one? And her friend replied in affirmative. Her friend told her that surely, dear, you can take this one. So Matilda takes that gold necklace from her friend and she walks away. Okay, let's continue.
She fell upon the neck of her friend, embarrassed her with passion. They went away with her treasure. The day of the ball arrived. Loisel was a great success. She was the prettiest of all, elegant, gracious, smiling, and full of joy. All the men noticed her, asked her name, and wanted to be presented. She danced with enthusiasm, intoxicated with pleasure, thinking of nothing but all this admiration, this victory so complete and sweet to her heart. She went home towards 4 o'clock in the morning. Her husband had been half asleep in one of the little salons since midnight, with three other gentlemen whose wives were enjoying themselves very much. He threw around her shoulder the modest straps they had carried, whose poverty clashed with the elegance of the ball costume. She wished to hurry away in order not to notice by the other women who were wrapping themselves in rich furs. Loisel detained her. Wait, said he, I am going to call a cab. But she would not listen and descended the step rapidly. When they were in the street, they found no carriage and they began to seek for one. Hailing the coachman whom they saw at a distance, they walked along towards the river, hopeless and shivering. Finally, they found one of those old carriages that one sees in Paris after nightfall. It took them as far as their door and they went wearily up to their apartment. It was all over for her, and on this his part, he remembered that he would have to be at the office by 10 o'clock. She removed the wrap from her shoulders before the glass for a final view of herself in her glory. Suddenly, she uttered a cry. Her necklace was not around her neck. Loisel, already half undressed, asked, what is the matter? She turned towards him excitedly. I no longer have Foister's necklace. He arose in dismay. What? How is that? It is not possible. And they looked in the folds of the dress, in the fold of the cloak, in the pocket, everywhere. They could not find it. He asked, you are sure you still had it when we left the minister's house?
Now, here there is a twist. Matilda hugged her friend with affection and left for the house. When she got the diamond necklace, she was really very excited for the party. The day of the party arrived, Loisel was appreciated as she was the prettiest, elegant, and gracious of all. She was happy and full of joy as all the men were noticing her. She was full of enthusiasm and pleasure, and she was very happy with all the attention she had gained. The couple left the party at 4 in the morning. Loisel had already slept at 12 in one of the halls with 3 other men whose wives were also enjoying the party. Loisel threw the wrap around his shoulders as they were about to leave. The elegance of the party dress was ruined by the wrap as it was not that pretty. So she was a showbiz kind of a lady who was much concerned about what she was wearing rather than the concern which her husband was showing towards her. This was because she has portrayed herself as a rich lady by wearing the new dress and the diamond necklace. Loisel asked her to wait as she was calling a cab, but she was in a hurry and quickly went downstairs. She did not want to be noticed. As they got on the street, they were looking for a carriage which could take them home but could not find one. And then suddenly a coachman at a distance and started calling him. The coachman did not stop. They kept walking together towards the river, and finally they found the carriage. The kind one finds in Paris at dusk time. The carriage took them to their home and they both went up. So by then they were extremely tired. The enthusiasm and fun for Loisel had ended by then, and Loisel also remembered that they had to reach office by 10 in the morning. As she stood in front of the mirror and removed the wrap to see herself one last time in that dress and the necklace, she realized that the necklace was missing. That is the turning point here. The necklace which she has borrowed from a friend, the diamond necklace, it was missing. It was not on her neck. Loisel was already half undressed by then and was almost ready to go to sleep. When he asked her the reason for shouting, she turned towards him and said that Foster's necklace was missing and that it might have fallen somewhere. They searched it in the folds of the dresses, the cloak, the pockets, but could not find it. Loisel then asked her if she remembered having it on while they were leaving the minister's house. Right? So she felt yes, she was wearing it, but if you have lost in the streets, you should have heard it to fall. It must be in the cab. So they were doing all sort of guesswork. They were doing where she might have lost it, where it would have fallen. And she remained in her evening gown, not having the force to go to bed. Towards 7 o'clock, her husband returned. He had found nothing. And he went to the police and to the COB officers and put an advertisement in the newspaper offering a reward. She waited all day in a state of bewilderment because this was an expensive necklace which they cannot afford it. And he said, write to your friend that you have broken